944400981. Yes, you can also tweet us at
Ah,
Smooth981FM. Yes,
yes, there
I
you
got
go.
it.
Use the hashtag freshly pressed 981 and you will get your comments into the right location. If you want to tag any of the analysts in particular, they are on Twitter as well at Ugo Dre, at Monsieur C, and that C is with a triple E. Okay, so let's get into the stories of the day. The first one comes in from the Punch newspaper. Security agents aiding bandits allege reps and demand NSA and ministers sacking. Now, going into it, the House of Representatives condemning the rising insecurity in the country, especially the recent killings in Benue, Taraba, and Plateau states. This was at plenary yesterday, and they demanded for the removal of the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Monguno, and the Minister of Defense, Major General Bashir Magashi. Now, Mr. C, this comes in it comes along as we heard from the Nigeria security tracker, with the news coming in tandem with data being released by the Nigeria security tracker that at least 2,968 people were killed and 1,484 abducted in Nigeria in the first quarter of the year. I mean, what is your reaction to what is happening with the House of Representatives now?
Okay, thank you, Shopper. And before I start, our thoughts go out to the families of the 70 people killed in Kanam and Wasi communities in Plateau State and the 25 people that were killed in Goma and Geotree local government areas of Benue State on Sunday and Monday, respectively. Now, diving into the story, it is a very grim and dire situation the country finds itself in. Now, there has been repeated we have had repeated incidents where people have lost their lives, people have been attacked, people have been displaced
Hmm.
from their residences, and it shows no sign of abating. Rather, it continues to increase. And it begs the question, given the increased funding of the security agencies, why this is the case. Now, privately, some Nigerians have held or share this school of thoughts that there are elements within the security forces that are sympathetic to these terrorists or actually in collusion with them. And now, at plenary yesterday, the House of Reps, including the Deputy Speaker, are now giving credence to this school of thought.
Mm.
Now, what is most regrettable is they received intelligence that the plateau attacks were coming. And given what has happened, it is safe to say they either did not do enough or they didn't do anything at all. Now, it is extremely sad when intelligence is gotten before an attack and then lives are still lost despite the provision of the intelligence.
Now, the question being, what is missing? Because if it's money, we've had so much increased spending when it comes to funding our military. We have intelligence already that we people keep referring to. What is missing? What is that missing link between all that we have and all that we're not putting into the fight?
Okay, so it's a number of things. One, there's overall coordination and supervision, and that is why they called for the sack or termination of appointments of the Minister for Defense and National Security Advisor. Now, it's important to note that in no serious setup will there be repeated failures and the guys at the top will remain in office. It doesn't happen. In the private sector, it will not happen. But for some strange reason, the commander in chief has not terminated the appointment. And we keep on getting repeated sound bites from federal government spokespersons that we're on top of it and that we will start to see results. We cannot start to see results when innocent Nigerians continue to die. Two, these sympathetic elements I referred to have to be weeded out, or there must be a way to keep sensitive operational information within a closed view on a need to know basis. Three, there has to be increased collaboration with the civilian communities because they know what is happening on the ground real time. Four, deployment of technology. You cannot win a war against enemies like Boko Haram, against enemies like ISWAP, if you will not effectively use technology. We keep on hearing reports of they drive in convoys, they drive over long distances. So if you had technology in the form of drones or satellites picking up large movements, You can mobilize and stop them at these particular points before they get to the communities. Again, why aren't we using technology efficiently? So it's a mix or a plethora of reasons. First of all, to send a sign to the rank and file that it's no longer business as usual, the two gentlemen must go. Bring a fresh set of eyes, because you cannot continue to do the same thing over and over again and different results. It won't happen.
What about the commander in chief? If we're talking about going according to the private, what the private sector does, and when we're looking at the National Assembly and what they can do,
Okay,
what about the commander in chief?
So ideally, in an ideal situation, the commander in chief should go. He should have resigned. In an ideal situation, the National Assembly, if he refuses to resign, can move for an impeachment. But this is reality. It's not going to happen.
Mm.
He's entering his last year. This National Assembly lacks the spine or the political will to do that. And I dare say that they may not be in a position to do that because of some of the things they've done in the past, which he's aware of. So we'll continue to model around and model into 2023 with this situation. And I'm just hoping, even though there's no credible basis for it right now, that the incoming administration will be more serious about tackling this insurgency and bringing this to an end.
Now let's talk about comments and reactions. In fact, the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, is in the news this morning. Train attack, what Nigerian government is doing to free kidnapped passengers. You can find details in the Premium Times newspaper. Well, the Nigerian government says it is doing all it can to free the dozens of people kidnapped from a train in Kaduna last month. The Honorable Minister of Information said the government would not disclose details of its efforts to the media, but they're doing a lot.
Okay, so we've heard the Honorable Minister for Information and what he said. Now, in an ideal situation, this will be the standard response because they cannot share the details of what they're doing, so they don't jeopardize whatever efforts they're making.
Mm.
Now, this is reality. Back to reality.
Yes, yes. See, that's the drum we're beating this morning, apparently, Mr.
Yes.
C.
Back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
This is template speak for the Nigerian administration when it's not doing anything. Now, they claim that they now have information on their possession of information that the terrorists, which they've mischievously continued to refer to as bandits, are working now with Boko Haram. When did you get information? What have you done with that information? Because reports coming in the aftermath of the train robbery, of the train incident in Kaduna, suggested that there were informants on the train who were pointing out who should be taken. Now, beyond all of that, they were supposed to have secured that train line. They are supposed to have taken steps to do that. The Nigerian government cannot tell you in all sincerity that they did what they ought to do. So when they say that they're taking steps, is there a timeline to this taking steps? Oh, we're working behind the scenes. There must be a timeline. They have suggested no timeline. They have not, and they've not indicated with any certainty that an attack like this will not repeat itself. So I'm going to take with a pinch of salt personally this talk about we're working on it, we're going to get it done. Because they're innocent Nigerians who are looking for their loved ones. There's been no response from the abductors. They don't know whether their loved ones are alive or dead. And that is truly a traumatic position to be in. Not knowing whether you've lost a loved one or the loved one is still alive. It's truly traumatic. And particularly Kaduna, I must chip this in. It's not safe to go to Kaduna by road. It's not safe to go by train. Even the airlines flying to Kaduna has suspended services.
Suspended their services.
So again, how do we get to Kaduna if we need to be in Kaduna? And for the people in Kaduna who need to travel out, how are they supposed to do it? How does that engender confidence in the state-sanctioned institutions? And there's an election coming next year. We always complain about low voting turnout. This is one of the reasons.
All right, let's take a look at this day news now. Displaced persons in Nigeria now 3.3 million, this according to ECOWAS. And we heard from the Vice President of the ECOWAS Commission, Madam Finda Koroma, who said the issue of displacement in the West African region needs to be addressed. And with effects in Nigeria, she actually broke down the numbers to 2.5 million people in the northeast, this coming as a result of Boko Haram activity, and 800,000 in the northwest, displaced as a result of kidnappings, extortion, and organized criminal attacks, displacing an additional 800,000, like I said. So, do you think this is an accurate representation of what is happening in Nigeria? And then, I guess another question that comes to me is, what does this do to Nigeria's standing to be seen as what she termed a fragile member state of ECOWAS?
Thanks, Shubert. So the numbers might probably be even more. Not too sure how this figure was gotten, but the numbers might be more. And rightly said, this is not just a Nigerian issue. This is a West African issue,
Mm.
particularly from the Sahel regions. And this is what happens when you have a lot of conflicts. And it's even scarier now that we're beginning to see coup d'etats return across some
Oh, yes,
West
the rising
African states.
wave.
Yeah. So when you start to have conflicts like this, and what then starts to happen is displacement. So you start to see people move to safer regions, and then this starts to cause all sorts of problems for countries. And we all live it here. Even in Lagos, you see a lot of beggars on the streets and roads. These are mostly displaced people who have left their communities because of war and conflict.
Mm.
So the ECOWAS Commission, I think in partnership with the Germans, set up the stabilization fund, and I think the idea was to basically stop these conflicts from even happening in the first place. And the thinking was, look, if you're able to equip, people who live in these communities with very good, food value chains, businesses that can support their livelihoods, then the knack or the knack to want to um, get into conflicts would not be there. So there won't be an incentive to want to get into conflicts, and that's what they're trying to do. But I'm not sure how efficient that is, because at the end of the day, the powers that are behind these conflicts are beyond just you know having ensuring that people really have food on their table. A lot of the conflicts are probably orchestrated. So even the communities or the people who live in these communities have no control over how this conflict, occurs. So it's a huge problem, and it's one of those issues that we do think will be a challenge for us this year in Nigeria, because the more conflicts you have, and the more refugees you have moving across the borders, and then this starts to affect the country. This also starts to affect production as well,
Mm.
because then people can't farm, people can't produce, people can't do things, and there's a huge challenge as well, insecurity wise too, because then you have a lot of miscreants living around you. People are you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know their background, and these people are desperate. So it's a huge challenge. You already see what how Europe is treating the Ukraine and Russian conflict, and a lot of the refugees coming out of Ukraine. It's a big problem. It's a problem of integration. It even is a potential problem down the road as well, right? Because sometimes you do have a lot of these people
Mhm.
form part of new sets of terrorist groups or miscreants or thieves. So it's a huge challenge, and
With marginalization comes disenfranchisement and comes the need
exactly.
to
I like what
agitate.
ECOWAS is doing, but I think more is needed. It's not just an ECOWAS German arrangement. We need a lot more funds to actually, sort of stop or reduce a lot of this conflicts. But to be honest, these conflicts are all orchestrated. That's a story for another day, and there's really nothing much that people can do.
All right, let's take some of your comments and reactions on the WhatsApp portal now. Good morning, all. I can't categorically say this government is behind these terrorism across the north, but at least I have no proof. I will willingly agree that the government has no intention to end it. These I have proved. We've heard of terrorism financiers for years. The government threatened to name and shame and prosecute. Nothing has been done. UAE indicted some of them. The government did nothing. We don't know when, we don't even know these people. So changing service chiefs won't do nothing except if those people are from the other part of the country.
All right, we have more messages coming in up on WhatsApp still. Faruche says, Mr. C, I can feel your emotions and your sincere analysis of the security situation in the country. The question on my mind is, where do we go from here? And Kazim says, they're working on it, just like they're still going to bring back our girls.
And Joyce says, good morning, team. These government won't do anything except to waste money and borrow more to waste. What happened to the Tucano fighter jets we spent billions to buy? These killers have been named terrorists. Why are they still okay? Excuses, and more waste. Lives gone every single day. Sad, sad, sad.
Says Joyce. Remember, you can also go on Twitter and youtube.com/smooth981fm to leave your comments and join the conversation.
Now let's bring you more headlines, this time from the This Day newspaper. Headers Association demands enforcement of presidential directive on grazing reserves and cattle routes. In fact, one of the prominent headers association in the country, Kulin Allah Cattle Rearers Association, called for the enforcement of the president's directive on encroached grazing reserves and cattle routes. Is this laudable or laughable, Mr. C?
Okay, thank you, Pepper. Now, last year, the president did give a directive ordering the Attorney General to make available grazing routes across the country for the benefit of herdsmen. Now, the challenge with that directive is it is in direct contravention of the existing law. The Land Use Act was promulgated in 1976 or 77, if I'm not mistaken, and all land in Nigeria outside federal government land is vested in the state to be held in trust by the government of the state. Now, the grazing routes were covered by a northern Nigeria law. There have never been grazing routes in the south covered by law. Never. It's never happened. What we had in the south, we actually had ranches. There were no grazing routes.
Really?
Yes. We had ranches, I think, in Ondo, Ekiti, and one other state I can't recall at the moment. Now, it's instructive that they pretend not to know what the law is and insist on the enforcement of a directive over the position of the law. The truth of the matter is this: the Land Use Act has not been abrogated, it hasn't been repealed, and it's in the Constitution. And the procedure for repealing it is the same procedure you need to take to amend the Constitution. Now, rather than sit and try to work together with the farmers and their host communities, they're insisting on a directive which only favors them. You cannot force or compel farmers to give up their farmland because your cattle need to eat. Cattle rearing is a private business. And because it's a private business, you must be prepared to pay the cost of running that business. And if part of the cost for running that business is hiring or leasing land to grow grass to feed your cattle, so be it. But insisting that that presidential directive be enforced is a non-starter because it will be legally challenged, and I dare say no court in Nigeria will.
Now he was saying this will also help them the farmers and herders conflict that we hear about almost every 6 months.
Okay, so Pepple, take your mind back to the late 90s or the early 2000s. We didn't have herdsman-farmer conflicts the way we have them now. So really, the present guise of herdsman-farmers conflict is a disguise or shell for something else. If you check most of the communities where we've had these clashes, those communities have natural resources. So they use the guise of feeding cattle. So what happens is they attack the community, the indigents run away, they take over. It's that simple. So if you are truly concerned about the conflict, why don't you adopt the Ondo State example? The Ondo State government got the herdsmen, got the farmers to sit down together, and they started a pilot scheme sometime last year, whereby they can grow their crops and also rear their cattle side by side. So the waste product from the animals serves as manure or fertilizer for the crops. And then they are given a small portion of land to feed. And I dare say that it's been relatively successful because I have not seen any recent incidents or skirmishes between herdsmen and farmers in Ondo State. Why are they not willing to explore that option? Why is the option of the presidential directive more endearing or more appealing to them?
All right.
Okay, messages still coming in. Fabian from Ekpe says there was a train explosion in Brooklyn in the United States 2 days ago. Within about 6 hours, there was a press conference, and each authority spoke within its own area, giving concise information regarding the attack and people injured. Compare that to our case, where over a week after the attack, there's still speculations, with officials giving vague details. History, unfortunately, will continue to repeat itself till one learns the lesson. And the messages do keep coming, and we will keep on reading.
Well, Jerry sends a message. He says, "Good morning, freshly pressed crew. It's not the lack of intelligence report, but the lack of political will to end this madness. That's why I know that no matter the kind of surveillance equipment purchased for the train lines, there will still be attacks." Chokwe, I know. Okay.
Why do you always say you know I won't read this, Jerry? We don't pick and we take the messages as they come. So we're glad that we got to read your message today. And this one in from the Punch newspaper: Port Harcourt refinery to produce 60,000 barrels per day by early 2023, says the federal government. Now, this according to the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Chief Timothy Silva, who on Tuesday said that the April 2023 completion date for the rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery is feasible. However, he also said that their commitment is to deliver 60,000 barrels per day from this refinery by the first quarter of next year. Ugudre, how does that work?
Not sure how it works. I mean, if it does happen by April next year, this would be a record. This
A
would
big
be
if.
against the norm because these are the same refineries that would spend billions and billions of naira over the last decade or so, and it hasn't ever come to light. So if they're insisting that by spending 1.5 billion dollars, this refinery is going to be able to produce 60,000 barrels per day next April, and then that's good news. Unfortunately, that's about when this government should be on its way out. Um, on the flip side, I'm a little concerned. My concern is that I do hope that this is not just another slush fund or another opportunity for politicians to cut away with money, considering that we're in an election season. These refineries have always been areas of, where it's always been government, in quote, ATMs. Nevertheless, there are also modular refineries that the government also claims that they have approved. There are some that are coming on stream. And well, the big picture here, Shakira, is that we do need these refineries to come on stream as quick as possible, whether it's modular or even whether it's the main ones. And that's because the so-called illegal refineries that are being shut down in Port
Mhm.
Harcourt or River State are having a huge impact on our livelihood elsewhere, I mean, Lagos and North and other parts of the country. And you can see that in diesel scarcity and the price of diesel. So price of diesel is high now because you don't have enough supply, and a lot of people would also point to the shutdown of illegal refineries in River State. That's one of the reasons because
Mm.
then you don't have a lot of supply. In fact, I
Because
did hear at
they
one
serve
point,
their function,
of course,
illegal
exactly.
or
I do
legality
hear
in
that some of
question.
those diesel will find its way to the north, but now you don't get that anymore. And of course, the Russia-Ukraine crisis also has its own impact on diesel supply, down here as well. So, the sooner we get these refineries working, the better for us. They claim Dangote refinery is going to be up later this year. Hopefully, I hope that works. But between now and when these refineries start to produce, I think we're going to be in this protracted, diesel scarcity and high diesel cost. And companies are already adjusting. Some companies even close early these days. Some close 3 o'clock. Some hotels shut down at some time. Just so that they can manage their diesel
Yeah, we
supply.
saw a bank that brought out a closing list for its
Exactly,
branches across the
because it's
nation.
just expensive. I mean, a year ago, diesel was about 300 plus, and it was high then. Like
Mm.
Mhm.
we had never seen that kind of pricing before, but now it's about 650, 670, or something like
But
that.
do you
Every
think
day we
that
see
this
new
this
things.
government can meet up with the deadline April next year? They had promised 18 months. That's from the 6th of May last
Last
year.
year, yeah.
$1.5 billion it would cost to repair that refinery. Will we see this completed by April next year?
That's what I'm saying here. So I do hope it's possible and it's not extended. In fact, it's not even that. Let's even hope that this is just not another slush fund, right? 60,000 barrels per day. I'm not sure how much oil that how much
That's 6
products
million.
that's going to give us. We don't know, but We just need something, to sort of fill the gap that we have.
Okay, so from petrol, let's talk about the power sector.
All right.
FEC approves 1.4 billion naira for power sector. That's the Federal Executive Council. They yesterday approved 1.4 billion naira for supply of more equipment for the transmission company of Nigeria to boost electricity supply across the country.
Yeah, good news, but it's a drop in the bucket. 1.4, according to the article, the 1.3 billion out of the 1.4 billion was meant for handling supply of handling equipment, haulage, and operational vehicles. These are also very important because you need operational vehicles and haulage equipment to expedite transmission faults and things like that, and make sure that their men can move around faster. But it's a drop in the bucket compared to what we really need to move the power sector forward. I was reading an article earlier on from the vice president saying that Nigeria needs, I think, 450 billion or so dollars for us to sort of have a very solid grid and of grid capacity. $50 billion is even more than our entire GDP as a country. So just to give you an idea of how far where this is going. And by the way, the CEO of the transmission company, the CEO here was also confirmed by the president. I think that's Suli Abdulaziz. So he has his work cut out. It's a lot of work to do to ensure there's stable power supply. A lot of the things we're seeing now, it's likely going to continue until we have the hydros come on stream. So I'm not going to be surprised if there are more system collapses down the road. It's just strange sort of things we face in this country. So there's the people stealing oil, the people stealing money, and now people are now vandalizing power equipment, and it's just a lot for people to do. Everything just gets stolen. So I think typically in other countries, you have things that are national security assets. They are assets that the country takes seriously because it does endanger the stability of the country. I have to regard these things. But here in Nigeria, these things are stolen away. Who knows? Perhaps by the people who should be protecting it.
Emphasis on taking things seriously.
We have just a couple of minutes left for the for to freshly pressed. So there's one story in particular that I knew that we want to touch on, which comes in from the Vanguard newspaper.
It says Osinachi's children told me their father warned them not to speak about how he maltreated their mother. That's the Minister of Women Affairs there.
Yeah, Tobacco, this is a very sad story, all in all. No matter how you flip it, read it, it's just sad that things like this still happen. And it's even worse that these things are encouraged by people that we think should know better, people that would typically go to. And what I mean is that it's a pastor, it's somebody whose singing inspires, people across religious spectrum. But what I find particularly disturbing about this particular story is the fact that children who probably, in quotes, are orphan now because they don't have a mother, and their father they might likely never see, and now being thrown in the spotlight and being asked questions and being told, come on, I mean, from their ages here, 12 years old, can't you protect their identity? What's the minister's own or whoever with telling us what the children are saying? And like, where are the boundaries, right? I kind of think that this is unnecessary. The children of these people should be protected and just kept out of the limelight, because this is not about who is crying. And I'm reading here, Insta was crying. I feel like, who cares? At the end of the day, the utmost responsibility now is how to take care of these children, because they still need to grow, and they're likely going to do that without their parents. So that's my takeaway from the story. I'm not really interested in how the minister feels or what the children are saying.
And let's take some messages.
Yes, going up on WhatsApp 0809 444 981. This one in from Victor Shion says the Dangote refinery costs $10 billion, has a refining capacity of 450,000 barrels. Meanwhile, the government wants to repair the Port Harcourt refinery with $1.5 billion just for 60,000 barrels. Question mark there.
Now on YouTube, we have this one from Baba Femi. It says the accurate and articulate analysis of Mr. C brings to the table is amazing. The number of massacre in just the first quarter alone is disturbing, even if we change Chief of Army Staff and Police IG.
All right, and that is that. We've come to the end of the show. Make sure you find our analysts on social media. You can find them at Ugodre across platforms, and also go check out nairametrics.com and at Monty with a triple E. Of course, we are at Smooth 981 FM. If you want to catch the replay on our YouTube channel, all you need to do is go to youtube.com/Smooth 981 FM Lagos.
The headlines, the stories.
We did not have adverts. We started